You know that feeling. You're sitting at your computer, lining up an enemy. Your crosshair is perfectly green, you click the left mouse button and the shell flies completely off target, hits the track for 0 damage, or simply disappears into thin air. Completely impossible. You take a deep breath, and a few seconds later, click the To Battle button again. World of Tanks. A game that significantly influenced the gaming industry, made billions of dollars, and created a community that both loves it with all its heart and absolutely hates it at the same time. Most people know it as that tank game their dads play in the evenings. But behind it lies one of the most fascinating stories in gaming business history. A story about how a group of developers from Eastern Europe risked absolutely everything. A story about overcoming technological limits, bringing forgotten history back to life, but also about anger, broken keyboards, and the frustration that became an inseparable part of its identity. How did anyone even come up with the idea of putting players inside 30-ton steel boxes? Let's go back to the very beginning. The year is 1998. We find ourselves in Minsk, the capital of Belarus. A physics student and passionate chess player, Viktor Kislay, is founding a small development studio called Wargaming here. Their goal? To make turn-based strategy games with a military theme. The first years were a brutal fight for survival. The studio released games like DBA Online and the Massive Assault series. They were good games. They had their small, loyal player base, but they were nowhere near a global hit. Wargaming could barely pay the bills. The turning point came in 2008 with Operation Bagration, a real-time strategy game set during World War II. The game received positive attention in Russia and showed that wargaming could handle bigger, more ambitious projects, but commercially it still didn't set the world on fire. Wargaming was at a crossroads. The market was changing, boxed games were fading, and the world was being taken over by online experiences with monthly fees. The studio needed to create an MMO game, a massive multiplayer title. And that brings us to the first major interesting detail in the game's history. World of Tanks was originally not supposed to be about tanks at all. At the time, the world was obsessed with the World of Warcraft phenomenon. Everybody wanted to make games with elves, orcs, and magic. Wargaming was no exception. Their new project was supposed to be exactly that kind of fantasy world. Development was already in full swing, character models and maps were being prepared. But in December 2008, the studio leadership met in Moscow and made a brutally honest decision. If we release another game with orcs, we'll just be a drop in the ocean. We won't be able to compete with the giants. They scrapped months of work. They realized their strength was military history. Someone on the team then suggested a radical idea. What if we made an MMO where you don't play as a human, but as a tank? The idea sounded insane. Western publishers laughed at them. They claimed players wanted fast action, Counter-Strike-style shooting, not crawling around in slow metal boxes. But Wargaming realized one brilliant thing. They focused on an older audience, on players around 30 to 50 years old who love military hardware, but no longer have the reflexes of teenagers built for super-fast shooters. But how do you make people keep playing a tank game for the long term? The developers took RPG elements and applied them to machines. Your tank was basically your character. You start at level 1, in a slow pre-war era tractor of a vehicle. You fight in 15 versus 15 battles. You earn experience and credits. Instead of upgrading a sword or armor, you buy better tracks, a stronger gun, and a thicker turret, until you unlock a completely new, stronger tank at the next tier. This smooth progression system across historical eras created an insanely addictive loop you couldn't escape from. In August 2010, Wargaming launched World of Tanks for the Russian market, and what followed was something absolutely nobody expected. From the very first days, the player count began rising exponentially. The free-to-play model meant anyone could download the game. Students played it, managers played it, and retirees played it too. The success was so devastating that it surprised even the developers themselves, and their servers started collapsing. And that brings us to our second interesting detail. One of the Russian server records reportedly reached an extreme number of simultaneous players, around 190,000. People willingly waited in queues lasting tens of minutes just to get into their virtual garage. The game then spread across Europe, America, and Asia. Wargaming went from a small studio barely paying rent to a global corporation. With the huge player base came a hunger for more content. Players finished the Soviet, German, and American lines and wanted more. But that's where wargaming ran into a harsh historical reality. Real tanks from World War II eventually just ran out. So the game developers had to become archivists, which brings us to the third interesting detail: bringing non-existent machines back to life. Many of the tanks players use in World of Tanks at higher tiers never saw real combat. Many were not even built as functional prototypes. Wargaming's historians traveled to military archives from Moscow to Munich and Washington. They found old sketches on napkins and wild engineering projects that were never actually realized. Using real physics calculations, they figured out how thick the armor might have been and what kind of engine would even be able to move such a giant. The game thus paradoxically brought to life a massive amount of military technology that would otherwise have remained buried under dust forever. We can praise World of Tanks from the perspective of history and brilliant marketing. But if you ask any player how they feel after 2 hours of playing, the answer will probably be full of words unfit for publication. Because if this game is famous for anything, it is its perfect ability to drive people completely insane. Why? It all comes down to 3 letters: RNG, random number generator. To keep players on edge, Wargaming built a system into the game where shooting is affected by dispersion, penetration, and even randomness in damage. That means even when you do everything right, the game can still pull the rug out from under you. You aim perfectly at an enemy weak spot, but the server decides your shell will fly into the dirt, or your shell mysteriously passes through the tank texture as if it didn't even exist. Just when you finally find the perfect position, artillery comes for you. A class of vehicles that can fire from the corner of the map over obstacles and right onto your roof without you being able to defend yourself. Add to that the broken matchmaking, which often throws you against tanks 2 tiers higher. The only solution is the so-called gold premium ammo. A game that was supposed to be about tactical armor angling has, over the years, turned into a festival of expensive shells and overpriced premium tanks that break balance. Technical issues, unbalanced maps, and toxic chat are part of the daily routine. So why are we here? Why do millions of people play a game that was born more than a decade ago from an idea that rejected elves and that still punishes us constantly today? Because World of Tanks is like the most toxic relationship imaginable. Despite all the flaws, when everything comes together, when after 5 minutes of maneuvering you blind fire the last enemy through a bush and kill him in one shot, when your platoon with friends holds the base at the very last second, that rush of dopamine is simply unbeatable. We didn't stay with it because it was perfect. We stayed because it stopped being just a game a long time ago. It's a platform that combines history, engineering, tactical thinking, and endless complaining about the game engine. It is full of bugs. It is frustrating. It honestly often doesn't work at all. But let's be honest with ourselves. Tonight, you're going to launch it again anyway. And before you do, I've got one small challenge for you at the end. If you liked this documentary, and drop a serious amount of likes on this video, I promise I'll sit down again and prepare a special follow-up with 10 absolutely insane facts about this game. So smash that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Your Lady O.